Today, we unravel the tale of the Onryō, a Japanese yokai who is better known as the vengeful spirit. But before we get into the story, please subscribe to the channel if you like these scary stories and hit the bell to be notified when we release new videos. Now let's proceed to the tale. In the remote hills of rural Japan, nestled between ancient forests and mist-covered mountains, there lies a village known as Takamura. Few venture there, and fewer still leave. The villagers are quiet, isolated, and deeply rooted in old traditions and superstitions. But one legend stands out above all others, the tale of the Onryō, a vengeful spirit born of immense rage and sorrow. The villagers speak of her only in whispers, for to say her name is to invite her wrath. Kenji had always heard stories about Takamura, but they were just that, stories. Growing up in the bustling city of Tokyo, he had no patience for superstition. As a photographer, he prided himself on capturing the beauty of remote, untouched places, and Takamura seemed like the perfect destination. A secluded village with ancient temples and haunting landscapes would make for stunning photos. He arrived in the village just as the sun was setting. The air was thick with mist, and the silence was unnerving. Takamura was unlike any place Kenji had visited before. The houses were old, made of wood and paper, their foundations seemingly sinking into the earth. The village was small, with only a handful of residents who eyed him cautiously but said nothing. Their stares made the hair on the back of his neck stand up, but he brushed it off as small-town curiosity. As night fell, Kenji checked into the only inn in the village, a creaky, dilapidated building that smelled of damp wood and incense. The innkeeper, an elderly woman with hollow eyes, barely spoke to him as she led him to his room. The room itself was simple, with tatami mats, a futon, and a single paper lantern casting a dim glow. Despite its simplicity, Kenji felt a strange, oppressive weight in the air. The silence of the village pressed against him like a thick fog. He unpacked his camera, eager to start his exploration early the next morning. But as he sat by the window, gazing out at the darkened village, something caught his eye. In the distance, at the edge of the forest, stood a figure, pale and motionless. Kenji squinted, trying to make out the details, but the mist obscured the figure's features. It was a woman, dressed in a flowing white kimono, her long black hair draped over her face. Kenji felt a chill crawl up his spine. He blinked, and when he looked again, the figure was gone. Dismissing it as his imagination, Kenji closed the window and settled into bed, though sleep didn't come easily. His mind kept drifting back to the figure in the mist, the eerie stillness of the village, and the strange, unsettling feeling that had been gnawing at him since his arrival. In the dead of night, he awoke to a faint sound, a low, mournful wail that seemed to echo through the walls of the inn. His heart raced as he listened, the sound growing louder, more agonizing. It was a woman's voice, filled with sorrow and anger. Kenji sat up, his hands shaking as he reached for his camera, as if somehow the lens would protect him from whatever was outside. The wailing continued, and against his better judgment, Kenji stood up and crept to the window. The mist outside had thickened, swirling like ghostly tendrils around the village. And there, standing once again at the edge of the forest, was the woman in white. This time, she was closer. Kenji's breath hitched in his throat as he realized she was looking directly at him. Her face, pale as death, with hollow, blackened eyes, was visible beneath her long, tangled hair. Her mouth was twisted into a snarl of pure rage, her skin stretched tight over her gaunt frame. She stood motionless, staring at him, her presence heavy and suffocating. Kenji stumbled backward, his mind racing. This was no ordinary woman, this was an Onryō, a vengeful spirit born of hatred and tragedy. He had heard tales of such spirits, but he never believed them. Onryōs were known to haunt those who had wronged them, seeking revenge on anyone who crossed their path, feeding on fear and despair. The wailing stopped abruptly, leaving a deafening silence in its wake. Kenji stood frozen in his room, the air thick with dread. He had to get out of this village. Morning couldn't come fast enough. Kenji packed his things in a frenzy and bolted out of the inn as soon as the first light of dawn broke through the mist. But as he stepped outside, he realized something was wrong. The village was empty. The streets were deserted, and the few villagers he had seen the day before were nowhere to be found. A sense of panic gripped him. He needed to leave, now. He headed toward the forest, hoping to find a road that would lead him out of Takamura. But as he entered the dense woods, the mist grew thicker, swallowing him whole. The trees twisted and loomed overhead like skeletal hands, and every sound was muffled by the oppressive fog. Kenji's heart pounded in his chest as he stumbled through the forest, the air growing colder with each step. Then, without warning, the wailing began again. Louder this time, more urgent. Kenji froze, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The sound seemed to come from all directions, echoing through the trees like a chorus of the damned. He turned, and there she was, the Onryō, closer than before. Her twisted form moved with unnatural speed, her feet barely touching the ground as she glided toward him. Her eyes were fixed on him, burning with hatred, her mouth stretched into an inhuman grin. Kenji ran. His feet pounded against the earth as he fled deeper into the forest, branches clawing at his skin, the wailing growing louder, more deafening. But no matter how fast he ran, the Onryō was always there, just behind him, her hollow eyes boring into his soul. He stumbled and fell, crashing to the ground with a painful thud. For a moment, everything went still. The wailing stopped. The forest was silent. Kenji lay there, panting, his body trembling. He dared not look back, terrified of what he might see. But he didn't have to. The Onryō appeared in front of him, her pale, twisted form towering over him. Her black hair hung like a curtain around her face, her eyes burning with unholy fury. She reached out with skeletal hands, her fingers like talons, and Kenji felt the icy grip of death closing in. No, he screamed, scrambling backward. But it was too late. The Onryō's hand closed around his throat, her touch colder than the grave. Her face loomed closer, her breath like frost on his skin. Kenji's vision blurred as the life was slowly drained from his body, his strength fading with each passing second. But just as the darkness began to take him, he saw something in the Onryō's eyes. A flicker of something human, something broken. Beneath the rage and hatred, there was sorrow. A deep, unending sorrow. And in that moment, Kenji understood. The Onryō wasn't just a spirit of vengeance, she was a soul trapped in an endless cycle of pain and fury. A victim of some unspeakable tragedy, doomed to wander the earth for eternity, seeking revenge on anyone who crossed her path. But there was no stopping her. Kenji's vision faded to black as the Onryō's grip tightened, her wailing filling his ears until there was nothing left but the sound of his own heartbeat slowing, then stopping. If you enjoyed listening to this story, please make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. It helps us to bring more and more creepy tales to you daily. Thank you for watching. See you on my next whisper.